Hi, second grade friends. Mrs. Cody back again. So I'm doing another chapter read aloud of the magic trap. And yesterday, remember, even after the hurricane, they survived it, Jesse and Evan by themselves. They went on to do the magic show. So of all people, it probably doesn't surprise you that Scott Spencer was kind of giving him a hard time. That the rabbit he pulled out was a toy rabbit and not a real rabbit. And you'll remember what happened to the real Professor Hoffman. Well, should I say what they think happened? I'm not going to tell you any more than that. I know you like the suspense, so we'll see about that. We're getting to the end of the book. I'm hoping you're enjoying it. This is the last book in the series, so I'm going to be thinking about what book we will read next, okay? All right, here we go. Let's see how they handle those kids who are not being very nice right now. "Where's Professor Hoffman?" asked Megan. Everyone in 4-0 knew that Evan and Jessie had a real rabbit named Professor Hoffman. "He's on vacation," said Jessie. "You should all applaud now." So the audience applauded, but they weren't particularly enthusiastic. They had expected to see a real rabbit, and all they got was a toy. That was when Jessie realized that the final trick had to be the best of the show. Everything depended on her. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, for my grand finale, I will make my very own assistant disappear." "Yeah, right," shouted Scott Spencer. "Are you going to use a toy again?" "Quiet," yelled Jessie. Her dad had been right. You needed to be prepared for these hecklers. Being on stage wasn't as easy as it seemed. Evan and Jessie carried the Indian basket out onto the stage, placing it directly in front of the small rug that covered the hole in the porch. Jessie could feel her heart start to speed up. Her chest felt tight and it was hard to draw in a deep breath. "You see before you an ordinary basket, 4 sides, a top, and a bottom." "Yeah, is there a toy rabbit inside?" called out Scott Spencer. "Be quiet, Scott," said Megan, and several people in the audience added, "Yeah, be quiet." Evan stared at Scott. "Why don't you come on stage and look for yourself if you dare?" Everyone in the audience turned to look at Scott, who looked as though he didn't quite know what to do. Evan stood casually on the stage as if he didn't have a care in the world, but Jessie was nervous. If Scott came up and discovered the fake bottom, the trick would be ruined. Why would I be afraid to come up there?" said Scott. He walked up to the front, full of swagger. Jessie knew this was Scott's way. He always tried to look bigger than he was. "Go ahead," said Evan, gesturing to the basket. Jessie couldn't believe what a cool customer Evan was. He acted as if there was nothing in the world to be worried about. Scott slapped at all 4 sides of the basket, then raised the lid and looked inside. "Please don't let him lift it. Please don't let him lift it," Jessie repeated in her head silently. She was thinking it so loudly she worried that her brain might broadcast her thoughts to the whole audience. "Stop thinking that," she told her brain. Scott walked around the entire basket once more, as if he was trying to think of another way to test it. And then he stopped and gave it a swift and hard kick. But the basket just slid a few inches across the porch and it held together. "It's good," said Scott. And right then, Jessie realized that Scott had sold the trick for them. He had made the basket more real, more believable than anything Evan or Jessie could have ever done. "And now my assistant will step inside the basket," announced Evan. She waved both arms as if she were signaling a plane to land, and then he looked at Jessie. Jessie had been in a lot of tight spots with Evan. Last summer they had fought a war over lemonade. Last fall they had put Scott Spencer on trial. Last winter they had to find their grandmother who was lost in a snowstorm and fight 2 bullies who were doing mean things to a helpless frog. And there were all the times before the divorce when she and Evan had sat in the climbing tree, waiting for their parents to stop arguing. Jessie looked at Evan's face. It seemed as if he was trying to say something to her with just his eyes, but what? Jessie could never figure out what people meant by the looks on their face. She needed words, and sometimes even those didn't make sense to her. but Jessie could replay everything that Evan had said to her in the past, and she had that now. She heard it inside her head. You can do this. You're doing great. Don't worry, I'm here. Jessie stepped inside the basket. She felt her insides turn to liquid and drip down into her feet. There was a strange swooshing sound in her ears, and at first she didn't realize that Evan was saying or what he was saying. And now my assistant will lie down in the basket. Jessie lowered herself into the basket, lying both hands over her chest as if she were dead. The sky was blue. She could hear a chainsaw buzzing somewhere, and a bird flew overhead. And then the lid closed on her. The basket became dark. Her vision narrowed, corkscrewing in on itself until she couldn't see anything except two small circles directly in front of her. A large hand pressed on her chest, squeezing all the air out of her lungs, and the swishing sound got so loud that she couldn't hear anything else. It was like the time she'd been playing in the high surf at the beach and somehow had gotten trapped under a raft that was riding a wave. She had been pushed underwater, unable to breathe, unable to see, unable to hear anything except the pounding sound of the water as it swallowed her up. Her legs wanted to kick her up to the surface. No, she told herself, you're not underwater, you're in a basket. She tried to breathe, to prove to herself that she could. A ribbon-thin drizzle of air squeaking into her lungs. You can do this, she told herself. You survived a Category 1 hurricane without any help from a grown-up. You're doing great. Don't worry, Evan's here. She kept her legs still. She waited to be able to breathe again. And then the basket lifted away, and she was left lying on the porch in the open air, staring up at the blue sky that seemed to surround her. No one in the audience could see her, though, because the tricky false bottom of the basket was hiding her from view. She was about to shout, I did it! When she remembered that they were right in the middle of the trick. That thought got her brain going again, and Jessie remembered that she needed to be quick. She needed to be smooth. She couldn't just lie there. She rolled quickly onto her side, tucking her legs in so she was as small as possible. Lifting her legs in so she would be as small as possible. Lifting one corner of the small rug, she flipped it over so that the hole in the porch was exposed. Then she quietly dropped herself into the hole. Evan was talking very loudly to the audience, building excitement for the next part of the illusion. As he circled the basket, he neatly flipped the rug back in place with his foot so the hole was covered again. Jessie, meanwhile, was under the porch, and it was gross down there. She had to crawl on her hands and knees, which was nasty because the ground was muddy and there was wet leaves and all kinds of bugs, not to mention sharp rocks that bit into her skin. She tried to be quiet, but it was difficult. Luckily, she didn't have far to go. The part of the trestle that her dad had cut away and then covered again, like a secret door, was just 10 feet from the hole Jessie had dropped through. She had to get through the secret door and then sneak into the side yard and into the woods so that she could reappear at the back of the audience just as Evan waved his magic wand. She didn't have much time, but when she got to the cutaway trestle, she saw something that made her heart stop. Do you have some ideas on what it possibly could be? I've got a couple ideas. I'm wondering what you're thinking. We will share more later. Bye. Have a good day.